Dear friends, in this lesson, let me discuss Jacques Derrida's very famous essay, Structure, Sign, and Play in the Discourse of Human Sciences. As a PG student, you should have studied this. When you were exposed to this particular essay for the first time, definitely 50% you should have understood. So when the time goes, if you reread it, it will give multiple meanings and it is a hard nut to crack in one way. So as a student of English literature, if you are able to understand this particular essay, your understanding level is very high. So here in this lesson, let me discuss this essay, structure, sign, and play in the discourse of human sciences. First, let me introduce the author. Jacques Derrida lived from 1930 to 2004. His full name is Jacques-Élie Derrida. He was an Algerian-born French philosopher. So popularly, he is identified as a French philosopher. He was the one who developed deconstruction, and he developed through close readings of the linguistics of Ferdinand de Saussure. So mostly he drew the inspiration from Ferdinand de Saussure, and afterwards he got the inspiration from other critics like Husserl and Heideggerian phenomenology. So these are the ideas that helped him to evolve his own deconstructionist thought. He was one of the major figures associated with post-structuralism and postmodern philosophy. So in the work here we have is the structure, sign, and play. So that is a post-structuralist idea. So it is the beginning of deconstruction. At the end of this lecture, if you are able to recall something related to these 16 phrases, then I would say that your understanding of structure, sign, and play in the discourse of human sciences is better. So the area of focus in this essay will be the presence of center, qua-center, decentering the structure, Levi-Strauss ethnology and its criticism, logocentrism, phonocentrism, trace, difference, binary opposition, aphoria, bricolage, structure and myth, free play, totalization, supplementality, free play and history. So if you are able to understand these phrases in the course of this discussion, then our understanding will be very good. Since this essay is the beginning of post-structuralist thought, it is very important to understand the difference between structuralism and post-structuralism before analyzing that work. So structuralism in general believes in the existence of reality. According to structuralism, there is a reality. But post-structuralism doubts the existence of reality. Second one, structuralism emphasizes the coherence of a system. So there is a center. So then it is connected properly. So that's why structuralists look for the interconnections in a particular work. Whereas post-structuralists emphasize on the incoherence of the system of discourse, how language is disjointed, how language is disjointedly together. So that is the focus point of post-structuralism. Then structuralism focuses on how systems set limits to what can be thought, said, and meant. So the center or the systems control or the language rules control what we think and what we say and mean. Whereas post-structuralism is polysemy. So there are a plurality of meaning is existing there. Then structuralists, in one way, they are having the tendency of being reductive, so conveying everything in a minimum possible words. So whereas this one post-structuralism focuses on the differences and that are being ignored in the process of reductive. So whatever is ignored by the structuralist in a work of art is concentrated and focused by post-structuralists. In one way, structuralists are radically anti-humanist. So even to understand the work of art, a literary piece, the author is not important and what is meant is not important. So just the words on the page, they are more important. Whereas post-structuralists not exactly humanist, but they try to restore a small amount of power or creativity to the subject. So post-structuralism focuses or it includes the presence of humanism and humanistic values in a particular work. Then structuralism is a monolithic structure. So the structure is the supreme being. So that is the idea of structuralism. Whereas post-structuralism focuses on reader or speaker who is operating within that structure. So here structuralism just focuses on the words found on the book. Whereas post-structuralism, so of course the words are there, but what operates, it goes beyond and deeper in a particular structure. So this is the basic idea or basic difference between structuralism and post-structuralism. Here the point of concern is Derrida is a post-structuralist. So whatever we have discussed in this part are these ideas will surface again and again in structure, sign and play. So regarding this essay, Derrida first presented this paper in 1966 at the John Hopkins International Colloquium on the language of criticism and the sciences of man. So this is the first time. So he presented in a conference. So it happened in 1966. So this is considered as the post-constructivist theoretical paradigm. So far, people were believing that structuralism is the supreme body of analysis. So whereas, so this particular essay that was read in 1966 is considered as a paradigm shift from between or from structuralism to post-structuralism. Now let's enter the essay. Derrida begins the essay by referring to an event. So in the history of human sciences, one important event occurred. So this event refers to the concept of structure. So this event can also be referred as rupture and redoubling. So what is rupture and what is redoubling? So according to Derrida, the appearance of a new structure. So already what we have, that is structuralism. So one important event took place. That event can be called as rupture. That also can be called as redoubling. So what is that rupture? The appearance of a new structure of an original system. So that always comes, and this is the very condition of its structural specificity, by a rupture with its past, its origin and its cause. So that is rupture. So that important event has occurred, has given birth to a deviation from the existing thought. In this context, he says the structure is episteme with structuralist thought. The structure, so basically this post-structuralism is the structure. So episteme means a kind of body of knowledge. It is basically with the structuralist thought. At the same time, post-structuralism engages with structuralism and also with traditional humanism and empiricism. So this is the deviation from the traditional structuralist thought. Post-structuralism goes beyond structuralist thought because it includes traditional humanism and empiricism. So it turns the logic of structuralism against itself. Post-structuralism turns structuralism against itself. How? It insists that the structurality of structure itself had been repressed in structuralism. So here the very idea of structuralism is structure is supreme. But post-structuralism, Derrida argues that so structure is repressed in structuralism. So that structurality of structure, how that structure is organized, that itself is suppressed by or repressed by structuralism. That is the need, or that is the reason why there is a requirement for post-structuralism. Now Derrida talks about the presence of center. So what is center? For example, if you take a school, the school correspondent is the center. Or if you take a private school or just a government school, the principal is the center, or even the bigger center is the government. So the teacher or headmaster should obey the rules and regulations of the government and the owner, so authorities. Fine. So there is the presence. So a center, whatever may be the thought, the center is there. But Derrida questions the basic metaphysical assumptions of Western philosophy since Plato, that is fixed. So according to the Western philosophy, that center is fixed, that is immutable. So it has the static presence. Please note down this. So according to the Western school of thought, the center is fixed. It is immutable, that cannot be overcome, and it has a static presence. Then what is metaphysics of presence? That is the desire to have access to the truth, or the desire to have access to immediate access to meaning. So that is the Western thought says the meaning is there, meaning is concrete. But the notion of structure, even according to structuralist theory, has always presupposed a center of meaning of sorts. Post-structuralism also says there is some meaning. But Derrida terms this desire for a center as logocentrism. So logocentrism is one of the important terms to be understood from this essay. What is logocentrism? Logocentrism says that so language and words are more important. Language and words are more important. He introduces this particular word in of grammatology in 1966. Derrida uses this word. So the idea behind this is, so if you take a piece of work, so there, what is more important? The language and the words. The words found on a stage. So that is, so according to Western philosophy, so everything is found within that work. But Derrida says this center limits the free play that it makes possible, as it stands outside is axiomatic. The center is not really the center. This is the base argument of Derrida. So what is that? According to Western school of thought, there is a center. So we try to understand language, a piece of work. In a piece of work or in a literary work, the words and language is more important. So we try to understand the meaning from the words found. So there is the Western school of thought. So that is called logocentrism, the desire to find the meaning, the desire to give more importance to the language. But Derrida says the center is not really the center. So Western school of thought and structuralism says the meaning is found within the text. But Derrida says the meaning may be within the text or it may be beyond the text. So it limits the free play. So free play here refers to, it is the modification of meaning, evolution of meaning. So meaning may change over the period of time. So when we just focus on the limited and fixed meaning of a word, this free play of meaning will be limited or restricted. Then under a centered structure, he extends his argument. Free play is based on a fundamental ground of the immobility and indisputability of the center. So whatever is said, so that cannot be questioned at all. So Derrida calls this as the metaphysics of presence. As I mentioned earlier, metaphysics of presence is the desire to have immediate access to meaning in a particular works. So because the center is there. The work, according to structuralists, the center is there. Then Derrida talks about qua-center. So it is a new idea. It is what is qua-center? It is the place where the substitutions of contents, elements, or terms is no longer possible. Qua-center. So here, for example, when there is a work. So according to structuralism and Western thought, so a particular work gives one meaning. So beyond that, no other interpretation is possible. When so such static stage reaches, so that is called qua-center. So no additional interpretation is possible at all at that time. But the center constitutes that very thing within a structure which governs the structure while escaping structurality. So here this is the argument of Derrida. The center escapes structurality. So earlier he has argued there is no fixed center. Second, he says while giving a structured meaning. So the center escapes that structurality. So that is the meaning. So meaning can be called the center. The center escapes from the structure. So paradoxically, the center is within the structure and outside it. So this is the paradox pointed out by Derrida. So where is the meaning in a text? Why do we read a particular text? We try to get some meaning. So according to Derrida, so the meaning may be within the structure, that is within the work, and outside it. So the very idea of structuralists trying to understand the meaning of a work within that work is false, because the meaning may be within the text and it may be outside the text also. This is the argument of Derrida. Now further we happen to see how Derrida criticizes structuralism. So he makes his argument based on the idea of center. Already he has established that center is not the center, it is somewhere else. So a structure assumes a center which orders the structure and gives meaning to its components. So it is the structure gives meaning. But Derrida approaches it as diachronically and synchronically. So here, according to structuralism approaches a particular work synchronically. So we have to understand the differences between diachronic analysis and synchronic analysis. So diachronic means A to Z, historical analysis of a particular work or structure. Synchronical means in a particular given point of time. So just say, so post structuralists go for synchronic analysis because they have the text alone. Whereas this idea of post-structuralism propagated by Derrida, it goes for diachronic analysis as well as synchronic analysis. So you can further see that synchronically the center cannot be substituted. It is the point at which substitution of contents, elements and terms is no longer possible. So in structuralism and structuralist analysis is mostly synchronic because further substitution, further interpretation is not at all possible. But historically, one center gets substituted for another. For example, if you go into the history, we'll understand the entire history of the concept of structure must be thought of as a series of substitution of center for center. What he means at this point, for example, the meaning of a particular word changes. The word we mean at present, for example, toilet. If you go to the medieval usage of toilet, so it is a makeup room. So the heroine goes to the makeup room and does all the necessary things. Whereas we know how the word toilet has evolved over the period of time. So according to synchronic analysis, the structuralist analysis, you take a particular work and analyze one believing that, so the meaning is there. But post-structuralism, they says that even that particular point of time, there should have been multiple meanings. That's why post-structuralists like Derrida argue for, they point out the need for diachronic and synchronic analysis. So, this at a given point of time, the center of the structure cannot be substituted by other elements, but historically, the point that defines play within a structure has changed. So, it is quite natural. Meaning will change over the period of time. So, here, what is the critique of Derrida here? Derrida criticizes structuralism because the structure cannot give complete meaning, because at the given point of time also, the meaning with which a writer should have written should have had multiple meanings. That's why, according to Derrida, structuralist idea is a little bit incomplete. Now he is talking about the history of human sciences, how human sciences evolved. So even at the beginning of this essay, Derrida pointed out that, so even the post-structuralist idea itself is a kind of event, a rupture, a redoubling. So now how human sciences evolved. So it has been a process of substitution, replacement and transformation of the center through all means to be thought. So everything changes according to history. So everything changes, including language, God, idea, the world spirit, the Renaissance man, the self, substance, matter, family, democracy, independence, authority, and so on. Everything changes. Just one thing. If you take India, so before 300 years, India was ruled by small kings, or one big Ashoka, then Mughal emperors like that. So later, the British came. The British ruled the country over 200 years, technically speaking, from 1858 to 1947, 190 years exactly. Then afterwards, India is a democratic country, especially after 1947. We elect our own rulers. Pakistan also got freedom by the same time, but Pakistan underwent that is dictatorship for a few years, which is right. So the thing is, we cannot say which is right and which is wrong. The power structure changes over the period of time. This is how the human sciences evolve in terms of God, idea, spirit, authority, independence, democracy, everything. So the point is, there is no fixed center. There is no fixed center. Everything that gets modified. Since each of these concepts is found our own whole system of thought and language, it must itself be beyond that system, untainted by its play of linguistic differences. So here, naturally, this leads to the binary opposites. In this context, Derrida talks about binary opposites. What is binary opposites? That is, human beings' evolution can be understood, or a work of art can be understood under the pretext of binary opposition. For example, morning, evening, day, night, good, bad. So like that, everything in this world is constructed or based on two opposite things. So when we take the history of human sciences, so whenever one center was present, the opposite was also present. So whenever one center was there, in the course of time, that center shifts its centrality. So it lost its own presence there. It was substituted by another thing. So that is the reason why Derrida says, in the history of human sciences, there was no fixed idea. Even according to the structuralists, if you go to the if you go to the particular work, even when it was written, that should not have written with a single meaning, because that meaning at that time might have undergone several changes. So naturally, it is good we understand things based on binary opposites. Now, Derrida decenters the structure. So the structure is fixed, but Derrida and post-structuralists, they decenter the structure. Now, how he is talking about the rupture again, it has become necessary to begin to think that there was no center. So, rupture, it is indicating the movement also. So, the rupture that talks about the possibility of debasing the center. Basically, Derrida gets the inspiration from three important writers and philosophers. One is Nietzsche, the German critic Nietzsche. He says, according to him, the metaphysics and especially of the concepts of being and truth. So, according to Nietzsche, there is no fixed truth. There is no fixed truth. Then Freud talks about the self-presence and a critique of consciousness of the subject, of self-identity, and of the self-proximity or self-possession. So these ideas influence uh, ideas of Derrida. Then Heidegger. Then actually he very drastic change is taken by Derrida based on the ideas of Heidegger. So according to Heidegger's metaphysics, it is the metaphysics of determination of being as presence. Just being is the presence. Now, Derrida's argument is after quoting all these persons, Nietzsche, Freud, Heidegger, he argues that all these attempts to decentering were, however, trapped in a sort of circle. For example, let me draw a diagram. So this is a circle. This is a circle. So imagine it is not a perfect circle, but circle. So what is the center of this circle? This should be the center of the circle. Fine. So if you say this particular part, center part is the center, that is a post-structuralist, that is a structuralist thought. When there is a circle, inside there will be a point, that is the center. That is a structuralist thought. But according to Derrida, the center may be here, the center may be here, the center may be here, or the center may be outside this circle. So this is post-structuralist thought. It is as simple as that. So in one way, so whatever ideas presented by Nietzsche, Freud, Heidegger, they are all trapped in a sort of circle. Again, if you try to decenter something, again you will come to the center. So because the center shifts, when there is center around that, for example, the idea is if the center is here, for example, then the other part will make room. So you can take another example, honeybee. Honeybee. There will be a queen bee. If the queen bee is in one hive, all bees will be there. So who is the center or what is the center? The queen bee is the center. But if you go to if the queen bee, how the people who cultivate honey, they catch the honey bee and keep it in their box. So all the honeybees they come there and form a hive there. So here, so whenever or wherever the honeybee goes, the center also shifts. So this is how we have to understand this particular point. That is, the decentering takes place always. Decentering takes place every time, everywhere, so there is no fixed structure at all. Next, Derrida talks about semiotics and phenomenology in post-structuralism. According to Derrida in Western thought, semiotics and phenomenology are compromised. What is semiotics? Semiotics is the study of signs, symbols, and their use. What is phenomenology? Phenomenology is the study of being, as Heidegger says, being and presence and being. So that is phenomenology. Now, according to Derrida, these two ideas are compromised. Semiotics stresses the fundamental connection of language to speech in a way that it undermines its insistence on the inherently arbitrary nature of sign. Actually, semiotics reduces the gap between, say, according to structuralists, there is no connection between what do we speak, the words and their meaning. But semiotics says there is some meaning. Phenomenology rejects metaphysical truths in the favor of phenomena and appearance. So phenomena says that appearance is more important. So only to insist for truth to be discovered in human consciousness and lived experience. So phenomenology looks for consciousness, consciousness that evolves through experience. So structuralism wants understands semiotics and phenomenology, whereas post-structuralism looks at idea in a different way. Next, Derrida enters into the very important idea of signifier and signified. So you should have studied this signifier and signified. For example, table, T-A-B-L-E, table. Then there is a picture of table, right? Table. Here, signified, this picture is signified. Table, the word, it is signified. So this particular understanding should come, so to understand this word. So T-A-B-L-E is a signifier. It denotes something. So this picture, table. So this is signified. This is referred. This is referred. Fine. So now Derrida talks about the two ways of erasing the difference between signifier and signified. So there is no sense in doing without the concepts of metaphysics in order to attack metaphysics. So in that context, so Derrida talks about the example from Saussure. Actually, the concept of signifier and signified is derived from Saussure, the Ferdinand de Saussure. Fine. So in Saussure, the metaphysics of presence is confirmed or affirmed by his insistence on the fact sign, so signifier and signified. So here he says the signified is the mental one, the signified is the mental one, and there is signifier is the psychological one, mental and psychological. Here to understand in a better way, the first, that is signifier, consists in reducing or deriving the signifier in submitting to the sign to thought. Look at that. When you read the letters T, A, B, L, E, so what happens? The picture of a table gets formed in your mind because you have seen it, you have read about it. So the word picture creates an image in your mind. So we give it to the mental thought. That is signified consists of questioning the system in which a preceding reduction function. It is just an object. So the meaning of a sign is present to the speaker, which he uses in difference of fact that meaning is constituted by a system of differences. So how meaning is constituted? Meaning is constituted by a system of differences. So here how to reduce the difference between the signified and signifier. So just to give a mental thought. Next, Derrida tries to answer the question, where is the meaning? If you read a work of art, where is the meaning? Uh, though Derrida criticizes phonocentrism. What is phonocentrism? There is sound. So phono means sound. So earlier it was logocentrism. Structuralism talks about logocentrism. Logocentrism means meaning is there hidden in the words. Whereas phonocentrism, there is meaning is there in the sound. So Derrida argues that the distance between the subject and his words exists in any case, even while speaking. So that is the meaning of sign is always unanchored. So the point is there is no connection between the word and the meaning it denotes. For example, so let me repeat that idea. There is no connection between the words and the meaning that they connote. Here, one simple example. If you take so the substance water, water we know the thing that we take, drink water. If you take the example from Tamil, its translation is Tannir. If you take Hindi, Pani. If you take Malayalam, Vellam. In Tamil, Vellam means it is so much of flood water. So now where is the meaning? The same word or the same sound. So there is Vellam that is indicated in Tamil that has a drastic meaning in another language. So the point here is there is no connection between the word and its meaning. The meaning is arbitrary. The meaning is arbitrary. So this is the point to be noted. Sign has no innate or transcendental truth. Sign means here the words. Sign, if you write table TABLE, so that is the sign. So sign has, there is language has no innate or transcendent truth. This meaning is never present at face value at all. We cannot escape the process of interpretation. So, see, according to the structuralist argument, language is everything. So, by reading a text, by reading the words found in a text, you can understand the meaning. But Derrida says there is no connection between the words and its meaning. Then how will you understand that particular art well? So that is the point. So the process of interpretation cannot be avoided. So in denying the metaphysics of presence, the distances between inside and outside are the problematized. There is no place outside of language from where meaning can be generated. The point here is Derrida even says he does not completely reject the idea of structuralism. So outside the text, outside the language, you cannot construct meaning. But within the language alone, you cannot construct meaning. So that is the point of Derrida. I repeat. So without language, outside the language, you cannot construe or construct a meaning. At the same time, within the language alone, you cannot construct meaning because meaning may be found outside the text also. Now we can see how the West is decentered according to Derrida. So in structuralist thought, other human sciences are not considered in understanding a text. It is at this point Derrida disagrees with the Western school of thought, the structuralism. Here he is talking about ethnology. So ethnology means scientific study of the comparison of different human races. Here what happened, history of the metaphysics and their concepts are dislocated, driven from its locus. See, when the structuralist idea, structuralist belief did not consider the other aspects related to the language, the other aspects related to the production of a work of art. So it is at this point the Western structuralism is decentered because a work of art, a writing, is produced by someone. It is produced in a context. So that's how he says. So European culture, everything, so it has got some influence from the history. Derrida builds his rest of the argument in this essay based on the ideas given by Claude Lévi-Strauss ethnology. First, Lévi-Strauss talks about what is nature and what is culture. So Derrida uses this very classic example. Actually, this idea is taken from Lévi-Strauss' book, Elementary Structures of Kinship, published in 1949. So, Lévi-Strauss is a French anthropologist. Here he is talking about nature and culture. So, what is the layman's understanding? What is nature? Whatever is permanent, whatever is already there. What is culture? Something we create. So this is the layman's understanding of nature and culture. But what Derrida says, nature is universal and spontaneous, not belonging to any other culture or any other determinate norm. So what is nature? Nature is universe. Nature is spontaneous. It does not belong to any norm, any rule. So nature cannot be contained within any rule. Then what is culture? Culture depends on a system of norms regulating society and is therefore capable of varying from one social structure to another. Here, for example, school, if you take school. So if you listen to an old man, for example, grandfather or relatives at home, there also you are learning. That is spontaneous, natural. But if you go to school, you cannot, you have to wear uniform, you have to wear shoes, you have fixed curriculum, you have textbooks, you have notebooks, you have to study that. So I hope you understand the difference between nature and culture. Nature is free. Nature is universal. Even in England and in Africa, anybody can learn from his own grandparents. But if you go to school, then there are fixed rules. So in India, school system is different. In America, school system is different. In England, it will be different. So the norms change in culture. So this is the basic difference. Based on that, Derrida says there is a pre-assumed binary opposition. Earlier we talked about the binary opposition. So two opposites things always exist together. Now he is talking about the pre-assumed binary opposition. What is pre-assumed? Strauss encountered a scandal while challenging the binary opposition. For example, he gives the example of incest prohibition. Incest prohibition. You know what is incest? Incest means within the blood relations, if anyone have affair, that is incest. Here, now he argues in two grounds. So incest, why there is a need for prohibiting incest? Because it is wrong. So it is happening everywhere. It is happening everywhere. So across the world, incest prohibition is insisted. Now the argument of Derrida is it is natural in the sense that it is almost universally present. So incest is present across all communities. So it is natural. So earlier we happened to see the definition of nature. So nature is present everywhere. So since incest is present everywhere, that is universal, that is natural. However, prohibition makes it a part of the system and norms of the custom, so it becomes cultural. Here, incest is natural, but prohibition is cultural because incest is present everywhere, so it is accepted. Then now not accepted. So is present, so it is natural. But the attempt to prevent incest is cultural, because it is specific to some cultures. For example, if you take ancient Rome, the kings and queens used to marry their own sisters and brothers so that the kingdom will be together. You should have watched a movie called Gladiator, in which one particular scene is kept where the young Caesar, after assuming power, when his own elder sister, who already has a son, is trying to move with another General Maximus. He tries to kill him, and he keeps her as his own wife. So the point is, in that culture, it was not prevented. So the point here is Derrida says the difference between culture and nature, as represented by Levi-Strauss, because Levi-Strauss is severely criticized for this idea. Derrida argues that this disputation of Strauss theory is not really a scandal, because there is a pre-assumed binary opposition that makes it a scandal, the system which sanctions the difference between nature and culture. So his idea of incest prohibition became a scandal because of some pre-existing binary opposition. Because in nature it is everywhere. So when we try to bring it to a norm, that becomes scandalous. So that's what Derrida says. Then he gives the idea of bricolage. Now this is the context in which he is talking about an engineer also. You take an engineer. An engineer needs perfection. For example, there is an aeronautical scientist. If there is a minute part missing, even a screw, it is not tight 100%, even 99%, there is a possibility that a rocket will collapse at one point of time. An engineer is a person who is known for perfection, right? Then bricolage, what is bricolage? A beautiful idea. Derrida highlights Levi-Strauss' use of the term bricolage, so the activity of a bricoler. So the bricoler is someone who uses the means at hand, that is the instruments he finds at his disposition around him. For example, here there are two persons, a poet and engineer. If engineer is going to construct a building, the poet is going to write a poetry. Fine, absolutely fine. So the engineer has so many raw materials. He will choose iron rods. He will choose cement. He will choose there is stones. Everything in the perfect combination he will build. So though there are so many materials available, an engineer will choose the thing absolutely necessary for construction, and he will make use of the best one. Fine. Whereas a poet, what he will do? The poet, whatever he finds, that will be the theme for him. He will keep writing whatever is at his disposal, whatever is available, whatever is available. Then the point here is as simple as that. What is a bricolage? Doing something with the available means. Who is a bricoler? One who uses and does something with the things available at his hand. So these are already there, which had not been especially conceived with an eye to the operation for which they are to be used. So the point is, bricolage becomes a metaphor for philosophical and literary critics, exemplifying Derrida's previous argument about the necessity of using the language available. So every language user is a bricoler. Every language user is a bricoler. I am a bricoler because I use language. I am a bricoler. See, I quoted an example from books. I quoted examples from movies, and I quoted examples from real life. So I am a brickcaller now. So you listen to this material now. You may read the original text. You may read somebody's essay on this. Then you also become a brickcaller. So what is brickcaller or what is bricolage? So using the available material. So post-structuralists say, so when we read a particular work, we should understand the author of this book should have written whatever materials available at that point of time. But structuralists restrict that idea. No, only the text is important. Whereas post-structuralists, they say something beyond, they go something beyond that. To conclude the idea on bricolage, Derrida says an engineer, for example, a tailor, stitches the cloth only for with the necessary one. So the engineer is merely a myth, since all physical and intellectual production is really a bricolage. This is the conclusion of Derrida. Or all intellectual things, all physical things, or just engineer is a myth. Engineer is a myth because everyone does something within the available means and available material. Next, Derrida talks about the relationship between structure and myth. So far, you know what is structure. So, what is myth? Myth is the popular belief. Myth is the popular belief. Every culture has a myth. So, America is a land of dream. It is a myth. India is a land of religion. It is also a myth because in India only, in the name of religion, there will be more problems, right? So, it is a myth, popular belief. Now, to explain this idea, Derrida draws inspiration from Levi-Strauss because Levi-Strauss points out the complexities, limitations of the myth. Now, mythological system, any mythological system cannot be studied as though it was some finite portion. Myth is not complete. Myth is not complete. Finite portion to be scientifically divided and conquered. So mythology cannot be analyzed based on science. So Levi Strauss has written a book called The Raw and the Cooked. The Raw and the Cooked in 1964. Now he says structural discourse on myths and mythological discourse must itself be mythomorphic. Mythomorphic, like that he says. Here, the point is, here what we have to understand here is Derrida does not accept the meaning of myths, does not accept the fixed meaning of myth, for which he makes a reference to the American myth, the Borno myth. So the Boro myth. So the Boro myth does not deserve to be privileged over others because there is nothing special about it which others lack. It is simply a transformation in some society or in neighboring or remote societies. The myth lacks unity or absolute source. So the point here made by Derrida is myth lacks its source. Myth lacks unity or absolute source. See, if you take a particular work, to some extent you can say this writer got the inspiration from this and wrote this book, or you can say this is the creative work of someone. But if you take a myth, how will you say this is the origin of the myth? So the myth should have been formed after so many oral narrations. By that time it might have undergone variations. So people might have added, people might have deleted, omitted, modified. So here Derrida says the Borno myth was taken or chosen by the critics and appreciated in America not because it was unique, but it was different. But it was different. But Derrida says there is no central point or there is no fixed source for any myth. So how Derrida concludes this criticism here. Borno myth deserves no more than any other myth to privilege of being a reference because it was favored by Strauss not because of its special character but rather by its irregular position in the midst of group of myths. Since it looked different, it was chosen by Levi Strauss. Otherwise, there is nothing special in Borno myth. Another interesting criticism of Derrida on Levi Strauss is, according to Derrida, Levi Strauss is unable to explain historical changes for describing structural transformation as the consequence of mysterious outside forces. So you cannot describe how the changes underwent as far as the myth or mythology is concerned. Now, what is the idea of free play? So at the beginning of the essay itself, he is saying free play is the disruption of presence. So what is presence? The structure. But free play is the disruption of presence and the movement of meaning. The presence of an element is always signifying and a substitutive reference inscribed in a system. So that is the chain. Whereas free play is going beyond that structure presence. Free play is always an interplay of absence and presence. So free play is always an interplay of absence and presence. That means meaning changes. Meaning presence, meaning is present sometimes, and meaning is absent sometimes. It is very important to understand the idea of totalization by Derrida. Totalization is at one time as useless, at another time it is impossible. In traditional idea, totalization cannot happen as there is always too much that is one can say and even more that exists which needs to be talked or written about. Here the meaning should be understood from the word total. So there is a kind of perfection, a kind of perfection. Any work of art cannot have a perfect meaning. So that is the thing. So Derrida argues that non-totalization needs to be conceptualized not on the basis of finitude of discourse, but at the same time it should be understood from free play. So totalization, the concluding meaning. So there is any work has got a fixed meaning that is not at all possible at all. If totalization no longer has any meaning, so please look at that. So complete meaning is not possible. So if totalization no longer has any meaning, it is not because the infinity of a field, because its nature is like that. So language cannot have a finite meaning because language is arbitrary. Language is uh, arbitrary and it opens up innumerable possibilities. Please note down. So the nature of language is totalization is not possible because it is arbitrary. It opens innumerable possibilities. Next, Derrida talks about supplementality. So earlier he said that there is no totalization or totality. Now, what is supplementality? He explains the possibility of free play through the concept of supplementality. So already you know what is free play. So free play is the movement of meaning. So movement of meaning or a change or shift in meaning. Then supplementality, according to this, one cannot determine the center, the sign which supplement it. So here, whatever you find in the form of words is just an addition. It is just an addition. So there is no center. You cannot go to the center and understand. But whatever you interpret on a particular work. If you interpret a particular work, that will be an addition to the meaning it conveys, but you cannot understand that meaning at all. So supplementarity involves infinite substitution of the center, which is an absence, which leads to the movement of play. It is an interesting and tricky argument. So again, I'd like to draw this diagram. So here a circle, right? Relatively perfect. A center, right? So imagine this particular circle as work literature. For example, Kenilworth, written by Walter Scott. So the history is the base. So the center is there. So the reader comes here. So the reader comes here, right? The reader comes and reads the book. So what is the objective of the reader? Goes to the going to the center and understanding. But yeah, argument of Derrida is you cannot understand the text because the center may not be the center. Absence of center may be there. The center may be outside also. So whatever is understood or interpreted by this particular reader forms another circle, another circle. So from this understanding, read the last point here, supplementarity. So this is called supplemental. Whatever is read and understood and complemented or given in the form of criticism is supplementarity. Supplementarity involves infinite substitutions of the center. So another person comes and he forms his own meaning. So this particular center may be somewhere else. It may be a smaller or even bigger circle. So supplementarity involves infinite substitutions of the center, which is an absence which leads to the movement of the play. So the meaning will be changing forever. This becomes possible because of the lack of the signified. There is always an overabundance of the signifier to the signified. So here language is supplementary because table may be one, but the table may be attributed with so many words. Earlier I gave the example of water. So like that's even for example water in some languages means it refers to liquor also. If you go to a liquor shop and ask for water, it is not water technically, it is liquor. So the meaning changes according to the context also. So that's why it is said language is supplementary. So a supplement would hence be an addition to what the signified means for already. So whatever we speak, it is a supplementary. So now I'm talking about Derrida's essays. It is a supplementary activity. It is not the central activity because center is the text probably. So even according to Derrida, post-structuralist thought, that text itself is not the center. So whatever other people say, it is only supplementary. So Derrida introduces the concept of how this meaning is always differed. Differed means difference. How signifier and signified are interchangeable in a complex network of free play. So earlier we thought that according to structuralists, signifier and signified are two different things. But for post-structuralists, signifier and signified are interchangeable. We can interchange the meaning. Next, Derrida points out an interesting aspect, how free play and history are always in tension with each other. So what is history? So history is a critique of the philosophy of presence. What is history? History is the critique of the philosophy of presence. So what do we read in history? The era of Ashoka, the era of Samudragupta. So like that when we talk, okay, there was a presence. The king Samudragupta was there. So we talk about the king Ashoka was there, who doubled his army not to fight. So he was there, his presence was there, he was there, and we talk about that is history. But free play means meaning changes. So now it is like always with a teleological and astrological metaphysics. Teleological, it is phenomena, study something. Eschatological, it is like the end, judgment. So the tension between free play and history is like teleological, so there is free play, and eschatological, that is history. So he says, Derrida says like this: free play also stands in conflict with presence. So here, presence, oh, for example, somebody is there. There are five friends. All persons has a presence there. But free play defies that. Free play says one person will go immediately. So here, play is description of presence. For example, when there is a husband and wife at the time of marriage, if someone says, when the wedding is reception is going on, someone comes and shouts, these two people, this couple will get divorced, then everyone will become angry. So that's what free play does. So free play defies the meaning. Free play changes the meaning. So probably that means that divorce may come or occur at the later point of time. So free play is always interplay of presence and absence. So free play, the moment of meaning. Sometimes the meaning is there. Sometimes the meaning is understood in this way. Sometimes the meaning is understood in some other way. However, Derrida argues that a radical approach would not be the taking of presence or absence. Instead, the possibility of play should be the premise of our presence or absence. So, free play and history will always have tension because free play does not have any restriction in understanding, whereas history is just eschatological. History is fixed, whereas free play is moving. It's like a wind. It is evolving over a period of time. To conclude this essay, Derrida's structure, sign, and play is considered as a post-structuralist manifesto, possible multiple choice question in any exam. It hopes that we proceed towards interpretation of interpretation. So there is no fixed meaning. That's why it is said. So this particular work, Derrida Structure, Sign and Play, talks about the possibility of interpretation of interpretations. So we have to go for a multiple interpretation where one is no longer turned towards the origin, affirms free play, and tries to pass beyond man and humanism. So this is the conclusion of this essay. So there is this essay, Derrida's essay is how human race should go towards the interpretation of interpretation. Number one, how there is no fixed meaning. So there is no origin. We cannot trace the origin. We cannot trace the origin. And it accepts free play. So there is modification of meaning. And it tries to pass beyond man and humanism. So the understanding of a literary text goes beyond man and humanism. So we need to borrow Nietzsche's idea of affirmation to not stop seeing play as limiting and negative. We should not see change of meaning should not be taken in a negative sense. So Nietzsche pronounces God is dead. That need not be read as destruction of a cohesive structure, but can be seen as a chance that opens up a possibility of diverse plurality and multiplicity. So post-structuralism argues for, or post-structuralism is for plurality and multiplicity of meaning. So when we read the work Nietzsche's God is dead, so we need not take it in the sense God is not there. God is dead for those who consider God is dead. Whereas, so that opens innumerable possibilities of argument. So to conclude this particular essay, we can say Post-structuralism accepts the reality of multiple truth and the plurality of truth. Dear friends, I hope this lecture was useful to you. We have many important lectures like this in our main course. The courses are tailor-made for different examinations like NET, PGTRB, SCRT, Polytechnic, and different states entrance examinations. If you need assistance regarding any one of these courses, feel free to call us. Thank you. All the best.